Dawahfilms' recent actions to attempt to discredit Thunderfoot have been both remarkable and curious. Remarkable in that Dawahfilms has carried a grudge so long, as well as the depth of his malevolence. Curious because I had deduced that Thunderfoot was a postdoc researcher whose principal investigator was in the food science department at Cornell University over a year ago. I would have expected a deep thinker like Dawahfilms to at least know that Thunderfoot worked at Cornell University a year ago, allowing him to express any grievances he had with Thunderfoot's YouTube activities. I have some shared views with Thunderfoot about Islam, and some recent interactions with Dawahfilms. I will discuss those interactions in a later video because I wish to believe everything Dawahfilms says. So I viewed Asadullah Ali's video, A Final Update, where he states there is a great deal of religious freedom in Malaysia. I also looked at the evidence that Ali claims is on his side, and placed them side by side.
Malaysia calls itself a, quote, moderate Islamic nation, but today powerful forces are trying to turn it into a fundamentalist Islamic country, and that has Malaysian Christians worried about their future. George Thomas has the story from the capital city of Kuala Lumpur.
They forced me to renounce Christ, but I said no way.
Daniel is a young Malaysian who has lived a secret and sometimes dangerous life.
I've been threatened with death so many times by radical Muslims.
That's not necessarily true, though. Yes, about 60% of the population here in Kuala Lumpur is Muslim. However, you can walk in Bukit Bintang or Bukit Nanas, which are places here in Kuala Lumpur. You can see Christmas trees right next to women wearing hijab.
Last year, when Malaysia's highest court rejected a Muslim convert's battle to be legally recognized as a Christian.
Was the Lena Joy case a turning point in this whole crisis in your country?
Yeah, it was a turning point in the wrong direction.
The chuckle every single time when I hear the latest Islamophobic rant from either a politician or some random, know-nothing on the internet.
To implement the kind of measures that we say are undermining of the entire societal framework of this country. Lena Joy was a bad decision, a very, very bad decision.
A decision that forced Lena Joy to flee the country. Meanwhile, Sarwar's support for Joy made him a wanted man. Posters carrying his picture circulated calling for his death. He's been branded an Islamic traitor because he believes that Malaysians should be free to choose their religion.
And I want them to see the other side of Islam instead of this common meta-narrative of it's all evil and 11 centuries of Islamic civilization have all been simply results of have been simply to produce terrorism or something of that sort.
Really good job of freeing her from her oppression when you referred to her as a pretty little thing with a sheet on her head.
To get along, there's a lot of churches, a lot of temples, there's a lot of Buddhist temples from the Chinese. There's a great amount of diversity and religious freedom here.
CBN News traveled to Malaysia to discover the truth about the treatment of Muslim converts to Christianity. I joined some Christians on a hike through the jungle, about a 2-hour journey from the capital city of Kuala Lumpur. We wanted to investigate an isolated encampment where some Christian converts say they've been taken to force them to return to Islam. Finally, we see the camp through a clearing. The Malay government calls these facilities retreat centers. Muslims willingly come here to strengthen their faith. But in the Malay language, a sign just beyond the foliage calls this facility a purification center. And if staying here is voluntary, then why the tight security?
The story of Revathi Masui's time in an Islamic rehabilitation camp was initially reported by Al Jazeera and has been mirrored on a number of YouTube channels, receiving over 100,000 views. But it is the far less viewed follow-up report by Al Jazeera which makes compelling viewing and gets to the heart of Sharia law in Malaysia.
Now, earlier this year, we told you the story of Revathi, a woman born as a Muslim in Malaysia, but who wanted to convert to Hinduism. She changed her name, married a Hindu man and had a baby, at which point she was arrested and charged with apostasy and detained in a rehabilitation centre for 180 days. Now, Revathi has been released, but is still forbidden from living as a Hindu. In this exclusive interview, she and her husband Suresh spoke to Fauzia Ibrahim.
Dan 6 bulan saya duduk sana, pisahkan anak saya, pisahkan suami saya. Lepas tu ambil anak saya tanpa kebenaran saya. Dan dia orang kata semua Islam kan. Islam ni memang suci kan. Tapi kenapa orang Islam buat macam ni?
After 6 months in an Islamic rehabilitation centre, Revathi Masusai remains defiantly Hindu. She was born Siti Fatima Abdul Karim to Muslim convert parents. Her official religion, as stated on her birth certificate, is Islam. But she's only known life as a Hindu, having been raised by her Hindu grandmother. She married Suresh in a Hindu ceremony in 2004. A year later, the couple had baby Divya Darshini. But family life was disrupted in January this year after Revathi tried to officially change her birth religion by opting out of Islam. She was arrested at the Malacca Sharia court, charged with apostasy and detained at a religious rehabilitation centre. Divya was then put in the care of her Muslim grandparents. Last week, the Sharia court released Revathi into her parents' custody, saying she needed continued Islamic guidance. Al Jazeera was there to witness her first moments of freedom.
Saya memang tak boleh terima terus tinggal dengan mak bapak saya. Saya pun ada family juga, saya ada anak, ada suami juga. Walaupun perkahwinan kami belum disahkan, tapi mungkin secepat mungkin kami disahkan. Dulu pun saya 6 bulan dekat sana, bila saya merontak baru dia bawa anak saya tunjuk. Kalau tidak dia takkan tunjuk anak saya. Alangkah suami saya dekat luar pagar pun dia halau. Sedangkan macam ni lagi. Sebab tu saya tak boleh tahan.
Even though Revathi has gained her freedom, she is unable to live with Suresh as their traditional wedding is not recognized by the Islamic authorities. The couple have appealed the ruling, hoping to reunite their young family.
Kesan saya memang sakit hati lah pasal lama tak tengok dia kan, kesian dia punya anak kan, pasal dia dulu sama saya sama ada kan, lepas berkahwin. Kenapa mahkamah bagi macam tu 6 bulan? Dalam 6 bulan tu dia main susah. Dia pisah dengan anak dengan saya lah. Itulah saya minta ni lah.
Revathi, apa perasaan kamu? Perasaan saya memang tak puas hati lah sebab dia orang buat macam ni. Kalau dari dulu awal masa saya buat permohonan dekat mahkamah syariah, kalau dia orang kata tak boleh, dia orang kena beritahu 2 jam juga tak boleh. Dia orang tak boleh force saya, lepas tu dah rujuk, lepas tu dah naik mahkamah, then lepas tu dakwa saya macam ni terus automatik hantar dekat pusat tanpa kebenaran saya semua. Itu memang tak puas hati, itu memang kejam saya kata.
While at the rehabilitation centre, Revathi said she was asked to attend Islamic courses and to pray 5 times a day according to Muslim rites. She refused and kept mostly to herself. Revathi said contact with her daughter and husband were restricted. Al Jazeera was on hand to witness an emotional meeting between her and Suresh during her detention.
Terima kasih ya.
Dan selagi setiap kali suami saya datang, dia orang buat suami saya macam barwa tau. Halau daripada pagar. Walaupun dia turun naik dekat mahkamah syariah nak surat kebenaran, tapi mahkamah syariah tak pedulikan dia. Dia orang pandang macam seekor anjing, dia orang pandang macam tu. Tak boleh buat manusia macam tu. Bila masa saya masuk dalam tu, memang jagaan saya kasih sepenuh pada suami saya. Saya yakin suami saya boleh jaga. Kenapa? Sebab anak saya masa lahir sampai saya mengandung, mak saya tak pernah tengok apa-apa pun. Anak saya macam mana rupa masa kecil pun tak pernah tengok. Ni dah lepas dah setahun lebih baru dia orang nak ambil. Sebab tu saya tak benarkan dia orang ambil anak saya. Tapi dia orang buat tipu macam tu, buat tanda tangan tipu macam tu. Sebab tu dia orang dapat ambil anak saya. Kalau tidak saya tak benarkan. Memang tak benarkan saya ambil.
Kenapa dia orang tidak cara yang baik? Boleh jumpa saya, minta saya cara baik. Saya boleh. Masa saya tidak rumah, dia orang ambil anak saya. Itu tidak patut lah. Saya memang tak patut.
Sekarang Suresh dan Revathi nak buat apa sekarang?
Kita nak
Saya nak fight saya nak tutupkan agama saya balik. Saya nak tutupkan itu.
Kita buat datang
Sebab 6
mahkamah
bulan
Syah
saya
macam
duduk
gini.
sana macam tak ada erti langsung, memang tak ada erti.
6 bulan buat
Waste my time. Saya punya orang kata apa? Tanggungjawab saya seorang ibu, seorang suami, isteri kepada suami, semua habis. 6 bulan tak ada apa makna. Dalam Islam, murtad hanya 3 bulan saja. Lepas 3 bulan adalah hak individu. So, saya ada hak memilih agama saya.
There are legal scholars in Malaysia who argue Article 11 of the Constitution calls for religious freedom for Malaysians, but acknowledge the government defers to the Islamic majority to not enforce that article. But I'll give Dawahfilms the final word on the subject.
There's a great amount of diversity and religious freedom here that a lot of people just don't see because they're more focused on thinking that everywhere where there is a majority of Muslims, it must be some sort of suppressive state. But it's not the case here in Malaysia. Of course, that'll be completely and utterly ignored by many of the people that I'm addressing this to.